Okay, today we're going to talk about Francisco Pizarro, another Spanish conquistador. He's also a cousin of our previous conquistador, Cortez.
So Francisco Pizarro, born 1478, died 1541. Francisco Pizarro was a Spanish conquistador. Today he is known as the conqueror of the Inca Empire. He also founded Lima, capital of Peru. Family, early life, and education. Francisco Pizarro grew up in Trujillo, Spain. His father, Gonzalo Pizarro, was a colonel in the Spanish army, and his mother, Francisca, was a poor woman living in Trujillo. Francisco grew up with little education and never learned how to read or write. Growing up, it was tough for Francisco. He was raised by his grandparents because his parents never got married. He worked as a pig herder for many years. Francisco was an ambitious man, however, and wanted to improve his lot in life. He heard stories of the riches of the New World and wanted to travel there and find his own fortune. He set sail for the New World and lived on the island of Hispaniola for several years as a colonist.
Okay, so here we have an obvious difference between these two conquistadors, Cortez and Pizarro. Cortez, he grew up, even though they're cousins, Cortez grew up, he was in a wealthy family. His father was well set and had a high standing. His cousin Pizzaro here, he grew up, his family poor. His parents never wed. He worked as a pig herder. You know, he wasn't looked at to become a lawyer or someone important by his family. This is the big difference starting out between these two conquistadors and the differences in their way they will explore and discover, and even their conquests. So let's look at the expedition to South America.
In 1502, Pizarro traveled to the New World, where he joined in several expeditions to see the Pacific Ocean. And in 1513, Pizarro joined the expedition of Núñez de Balboa across the Isthmus of Panama to become one of the first Europeans to see the Pacific Ocean.
Okay, so here is a name that you might recognize, Balboa. They actually use that name for a pirate captain in Pirate of the Caribbean.
Oh, yeah.
So that gives you an idea in the Pirates of the Caribbean that Balboa was a Spanish pirate.
Yeah.
Okay, let's continue.
In 1524, after hearing stories about the exploration of Peru, he joined Diego de Almagro and Hernando de Soto. Together, they agreed to travel to Peru and look for gold. The expedition was a disaster, but Pizarro made connections with the Inca people.
Okay, so what we have going on here is a big difference. We see that Quartz, when he went and set sail, he was basically a boss, high standing on his expedition, where Pizarro kind of went on his own, and then he met these other men, Diego and Hernando de Soto, and they got together because all of them were from sort of poor standing. They're just looking to get rich. They just set off to do something with no clue or anything, and it became a disaster for them. It did not work out well at all.
Okay, so in 1528, he returned to Spain, where the king allowed him to conquer the new land for the sake of Spain. Let's see.
Okay,
So here's some photos.
so after Pizarro spent some time in the New World, and he did some fighting, his standing now we see is improving because of his adventures, or as we saw, the disastrous misadventure. When he returned to Spain, word got to the king that this man, he went and he fought and he was trying to do this stuff for Spain and the New World. So the Spanish king, misinformed, actually gave him now permission. So now we see Pizarro's standing. He desperately wanted to become more famous and more important, is now becoming that with the king and the royal family of Spain.
Yeah, so Pizarro himself was to be named governor of Peru. In 1531, he landed in Peru again, accompanied by not even 300 soldiers. The country was devastated by a recent civil war between Atahualpa and Huascar, the sons of the dead emperor.
Okay.
Here we have some photos of those guys. Well,
yeah, we have a couple photos
drawings.
now. Here's where Pizzaro gets a little bit lucky. The Inca emperor dies, and he has two sons, Atahualpa and Huascar. And the two sons actually went to war with each other to become the new emperor. So when Pizzaro gets there, even though he only has a few hundred soldiers, most of the Inca people,
they were already pretty devastated by
yeah,
the
war. They're not really in fighting mood and fighting readiness.
Okay, so in November 1532, Pizarro met Atahualpa in the city of Cajamarca and managed to capture him, despite the Inca was protected by thousands of soldiers. The weapons of the Spaniards proved superior. In 1533, after paying a huge ransom for his release, Atahualpa requested to be let free, but was killed anyway by Pizarro. He then continued south into Peru and captured the capital of Cusco.
Okay, this is really important into seeing how Pizarro operated, right? We saw Cortez, he was there, he was a military man, he did everything, and he did it for Spain. Here we see Pizarro being more of a manipulator. He's so desperate to become high standing that he manipulates the Inca people, Atahualpa, right? And then because of this manipulation, he then captures him and kidnaps him and ransoms him. And then when the ransom paid, he just kills him anyway, right? Very immoral the way he's advancing his station.
Okay. In 1535, Pizarro founded a new capital named La Ciudad de los Reyes, today known as Lima. However, some Spaniards had not been part of the capture of the Inca and therefore had not been paid any gold. Led by Almagro's men marched south into present-day Chile to find new riches, while Pizarro stayed in Peru.
Okay, so what you got is Pizarro, his old friend Almagro, right? Almagro wasn't part of this plan to do the kidnap, ransoming, and then the killing of this Incan emperor. So Pizarro did not share any of the gold he got with these other men, which kind of angered them a bit. Let's see how that works out.
So the Inca were treated very ill and their riches stolen by the Spaniards, but who built huge estates or traveled back to Spain. Pizarro became the richest and most powerful of them all. In 1536, the Inca tried to overthrow him in a rebellion, but failed since Pizarro managed to subdue the Incas after a year of fights. However, the Spaniards had become so weakened that when Almagro returned, he took power and expelled Pizarro to the north.
Okay, so here we have Pizarro. After all his fighting with the Inca, his manpower, his Spanish soldiers that were under him were depleted. He didn't have a lot of men left. Here comes back Almagro, still mad at him about the ransom gold.
Okay, so Pizarro returned with an army in 1538 and defeated Almagro. Almagro was executed in the plaza of Cusco, and Pizarro was again sole ruler. However, Almagro had a son who swore revenge. In 1541, Pizarro was killed in his palace in Lima by a number of men following Diego Almagro the Younger. He was himself caught and executed the following year. So was the last brother of Pizarro struggling for power in Peru. In 1548, then the Spanish king took personal control over the country by a personal envoy the viceroy.
Okay, so here's where Almagro comes back. He's angry. Pizzaro runs away because he doesn't have the protection of his enough soldiers. Pizzaro gets another army like he did before very quickly. He comes back. He kills Almagro and becomes the leader of Peru again. Now,
But then Almagro has a son who...
yeah, and that's Diego Almagro the Younger, which means same name as the father with Spaniards. The Younger just means son of.
Okay.
Right?
So, the legacy of Pizzaro. The city Pizzaro founded, Lima, is still the capital of Peru after almost 500 years. You can see a Pizzaro statue here in Lima, Peru.
And a picture of Lima.
Yeah, the coastline and the big city.
Now, what's really interesting when it comes to these conquistadors, Cortez and Pizarro, is if you look at their legacies compared to other explorers like Columbus, who we celebrate national holidays for, we have world fairs in his name. There's all these things about Columbus, statues in many places, and he's
Cities named after him.
cities named after him, yeah. And when people talk about Columbus, they talk very fondly of him, even though we know from the Columbus unit that he was probably the dumbest of all explorers. But here, when we talk about the legacy of these conquistadors, there's a couple statues. The cities they founded are still there, but there's no holidays. There's nothing really glorifying these men. And it's because they at first were military men. They were conquerors. They were war when they were on their adventures discovering and stuff. And that's the big difference that we see between the conquistadors versus the other explorers we've studied so far.
Okay, so you should watch the Multimedia 16, the one on Pizzaro, and answer the questions in the quiz assignment.
Okay, and your next assignment you'll get later this week is a writing assignment, and we'd like you to read again through Pizzaro and Cortez and write us a brief essay that really outlines the difference between the two.
Yeah, you're comparing, telling us the differences between those two conquistadors.
Which a lot of them you can find in the reading, the multimedia, and this video too. Now, don't forget to share, like, or subscribe.
Hit the subscribe button and make that red button
Just
turn
poke
gray.
the screen right there.